Do you wish you could get virtual attendees to turn their cameras on? Is engagement the number one issue on your virtual meetings? Do you want your meeting to be the most engaging virtual meeting? Well, welcome to the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. In this podcast, we'll talk to the top people around the world in virtual meetings and give you, the listener, the best ideas to host engaging virtual meetings. Make sure that you click subscribe so you can get the latest episode of the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. Now, let's welcome your host, the author of the #1 Amazon hot new release, Engaging Virtual Meetings, John Chen. Welcome to another Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast here on December 20th. Happy holidays to everybody. I'm excited. I'm working on my top 100 clients are all receiving Christmas gifts or not Christmas, holiday gifts. And so I'm excited that to share those with the many people who get a chance to support my work. If you are watching this, take a moment to make sure and subscribe, share, like, and comment if you're there. If you're here live on the show, we'll actually incorporate your comments here. If you want to actually subscribe to this podcast, you can go to Engaging Virtual Meetings online and you can subscribe on any of the 13 different platforms. And I'm excited to announce that we are open registration for the Engaging Conference. This is our 5th version. This year will be the first year that we'll be going hybrid. I'm actually looking for now, I do have a few spots open for the top hybrid speakers that you know. If you know somebody like that, please have them contact me. Otherwise, you can register at engagingvirtualmeetings.com/CON. And now for our next guest. She's a coach, trainer, speaker who gets leaders and teams out of habitual thinking so they can solve challenges. I always love our creativity people and our people who get us to think differently and maybe out of the box if it's not too cliche. Let's welcome to the podcast, the one and only Ellia Harris.
Hey, John. Nice to be here. Good to see you.
Glad to have you here. Happy holidays. How are you doing?
And you? Good. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so we're only a few days away. Do you feel like you're ready or you feel like you're behind or you feel like you're ahead?
So slight confession. I don't actually celebrate the holidays. I use it as a time to rest. So I'm looking forward to resting, recharging, playing, just completely switching off.
And that's probably the best gift you can give yourself for sure in a year. Quite often I find that whenever I step away from something, all the best solutions come. So that's at least my part. Speaking of solutions, you have solutions for us. So why don't you do this? Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Okay. I'm Ellia Harris. I'm Chief Innovation Coach at the Potential Center. And I coach, I train, and I speak, and I engage with leaders. I work with leaders to get their teams out of habitual thinking so that they can solve challenges with creative solutions that they just couldn't see before. And the way I do this work, I know you work in the creativity field, John. So what I do is a little bit different because I actually merge developing leadership skills with the ability to facilitate creative problem solving. And I started doing that because after 10 years of being in the organization development space and 7 years of being a senior manager myself, there was a missing link for me. I knew all about leadership and had been through leadership training programs, and I'd learned about creative problem solving. It was an area of growing interest for me, but there was nothing that helped me as a leader be more creative with my team. And so, as with many things in my life, I put it together myself. And I found that combining those skills was actually the fastest route to being an effective leader of a high-performing team.
So do you have any examples of your creativity here? Like in mine, I know I quite often share that I actually got 2 US patents while I was at Microsoft. And then one of them was for developing a simulator that would simulate tens of thousands of email clients so we could figure out what was going on with one of our products. And so I'm curious about some of the creativity or other things that you saw or that you helped unveil in your class.
Yeah. So it's a combination of things that I developed in the teams that I was working with, as well as things that I've seen with clients. So something from my own experience was that when I was a senior manager at Oxfam, an international nonprofit,
Hmm.
I had stepped into that role as an interim, actually, and we still had fundraising targets that we had to meet. So basically, I threw down the gauntlet to my team and I said, "Okay, come up with an event that is." I was managing the corporate relations team. Come up with an event that would be of interest to companies, and so I knew I was working with really great creative thinkers, and they did me proud. They came back with this idea. It was a weekend event, and it was a team building event. They were going off into the woods. They were going to be camping. They were going to be provided with supplies for how to cook their own dinner, and they were given a series of tasks, a combination of brain and brawn. And behind all this was the message that this is what poor people in developing countries face every day of their lives. And
Oh,
so it was really good at getting the message across. We had to get approval for that project. They presented it so well. They brought the project to life and they got the approval for it.
hmm.
And it was a great success and it got some local PR as well. Another example came from, and these are kind of small examples, but really uh, creativity starts on a small level and then it builds up. So I have no shame in talking about small projects. So here's one from a school that I worked with. It was a technical college in the UK, and they were having issues with student attendance. Basically, the number of people that were bunking off from school was just getting ridiculous, and they put penalties in place, and they were sending kids to detention, and they felt really bad because they felt like they were missing something. So I got together with the leadership team and we changed the focus. Their problem, as they saw it, was how do we get kids to stop bunking off from school? And we shifted that around and made it a more positive problem statement, which was how do we help kids appreciate their academic progress? How do we get kids to enjoy coming to school, basically? So, as a result of some of the brainstorming that we did, they put a survey in place. It was an anonymous survey asking students what they needed more of, what they wanted more of.
Hmm.
And the result of that survey helped them put some just small things into place, but things that really helped, like a one-to-one mentoring program and more time with the teachers and peer-to-peer coaching. And as a result of all that, they actually increased academic performance to the point where they had a 20% increase in the number of students that were graduating. And this was from an area where there was low high school graduation rates. So it was pretty good.
That's fantastic. The experiential part I think is so important in, putting people inside of things. So I think that is crafty. I still remember to this date. I was probably 8 years old in my hometown of Stockton, California. It's a fundraiser where, you're trying to get people to pay you for every mile you walk. All right. So we walked probably like 6 to 10 miles. And then at the end of it, they come in and they have a big presentation where they tell you a little bit more about, where the money's going. And all you get is a cup of rice, right? Because again, this was around world hunger, and this was saying this is
Right.
actually the typical meal that these these people that are going to receive these funds are going to get, and like you're hungry, right? And I still haven't forgotten that to this date about how powerful the experiential part is, and that cup of rice reminded me that this is how others have it. Like we're lucky every day that we have a lot of the things that we have. I do want to
So
talk a little
powerful.
bit more about the positive statements. So I'd love to hear from you. What were some of the negative things that people said about virtual meetings, and did you help them turn those into positive statements to help people in how they were dealing with virtual meetings over the last 3 years?
At some point, people just came to accept it. Um,
We
Before
didn't have a
that,
choice. There was very little choice. I agree.
exactly,
Yeah, there's little
exactly.
choice.
Before that, however, I was in a different career. I've had a few different career tracks in my life, let's call it that.
Mhm.
And I was basically a productivity coach and a professional organizer. And when the pandemic hit, people were just like, how am I going to work with clients? We do this work side by side. Now, by that time, I'd had quite a bit of experience running Zoom meetings. So I changed tactics. Instead of working with clients, I started training other professional organizers in how to work successfully with their clients in a virtual environment. So there were a lot of how-to questions. How do I show a client how to fold a shirt when I'm not able to stand right next to them? Or how do I create rapport if I can't touch somebody on the shoulder? So I helped them come up with alternatives, and there were a lot of answers to how-to questions in there. That's a great question, John.
What were some of your top go-to tactics, right, that you found worked over and over or across clients, especially in the building rapport? I think that's one of the core aspects that needed to happen in that time, and I don't think there was a lot of best practices around there. So I'm curious, what did you share?
Yeah, so I'm going back a few years, so I'm a little rusty in my memory. It was probably things like make make eye contact is really important when you're developing rapport. So what you have to do is make eye contact with that little green light on the computer, which is kind of that's hard to do. Yeah, trying to see what somebody's face looks like through a green light. You just have to get used to it. Another way of developing rapport over a virtual space that I helped the organizers with was helping them come up with questions to ask. So it was more of a two-way engagement, and it wasn't just, let me tell you what to do, or let me just sit back and, have you tell me about your problems with organizing. It's still about creating a dialogue. You just have to do it over, some ether space.
Hmm.
Other things that I encouraged them to do was to be more conscious of body language. Yeah, we only see each other from the waist up, but there's a lot of information that gets conveyed through the face. We can use our hands to communicate as well. My mother always told me to sit on my hands because I used to talk with my hands so much, and yet it's such an important route for communication. So now I'm proud of talking with my hands because it means I'm a good communicator.
It's actually encouraged. So there's a program on LinkedIn called the Neuroscience of Virtual Selling, and it
Ah,
says they have the research that says that if you don't use your hands, don't show your hands at least once during your meeting, people are 20% less likely to trust you or buy from you.
oh,
What's the other
really?
research? The other research came around and they said all the top ranked TED Talks, right, had 5 times or more hand gestures than the bottom 5 or 10%. So
Very interesting.
and then one of my somebody who was in one of my classes took one of my tips and did two things: stood up and purposely used hand gestures. And he said he had the best presentation out of the last 10 presentations from that. So
Fabulous.
let's talk a little more about your light bulb thinking. You have a framework, right? Then for this creativity, can you share a little more about how that came to be, and how does it benefit people?
Yeah. So this is going back to what I was saying earlier about trying to find a solution for myself. And I've been doing training for over 10 years. And one of the things that I appreciate is people need simplicity. And one of the things that I try and do, because I'm solely dedicated to helping people be more creative in their problem solving and come up with innovative ideas. And so I wanted a framework. And when we have a framework, it's something that we can, kind of hang our hat on and not worry about the basic thinking of. It tells us how to do things. And so I took what I'd been teaching over the years and just put it into this framework. And it's a 4-phase framework. The first phase is planning. So, what is your ultimate goal? What is it you're trying to achieve? And what is it the problem? Oftentimes, we don't spend enough time thinking about what's the problem we're actually trying to resolve. We just go straight into brainstorming, and that's such a mistake. So, doing planning, any project management, any project manager will tell you the more planning you do, the more successful the project is going to be. The second phase is the ideating, that juicy brainstorming part, and there are loads of tools out there. I know you have a whole bunch. I've got a whole bunch, and there are a whole bunch more out in the internet as well. The third stage is choosing. Out of all those ideas that you came up with, how do you choose the one or two that you're going to move forward with? And so it's about coming up with criteria to help make those choices. And then the fourth phase is it's actually a split. You're either going to implement what you came up with because you've more or less got the resources and the people that you need to make that happen, or you're going to innovate. You come up with this concept that you think is the winner, but you say, this has the potential to be so much more. So let's take the time to delve into it. Let's do some more research. Let's come up with prototypes. Let's do some testing. So at that point, you just need to make that choice. And then the innovation is a whole other process, which I talk about separately.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Philip Jones from Training Magazine and Lakewood Media Group. And so thank you so much, Philip, for tuning in here. That planning phase is the one that I really start at. It's amazing the number of people that start solving a problem that they don't know about. And
Right.
this is funny. I coached my son. My son was having trouble in his college interviews trying to get his job. And he called me because I was actually a 10-year recruiter at Microsoft. I was a technical recruiter.
Ah,
And I told him this whole story. One of the strategies is I suddenly realized during my interview at Microsoft that somebody asked me a question that they didn't know the answer to. It was something they were working on right now. And I'm like, this interview is different, right? So I suddenly detected that. And then the key here, I told them this is a strategy that I'm using is number one, I didn't know the answer, and I'm 99% sure the other person didn't know the answer either. So now we're kind of like in the same boat together. So what I end up doing was I tell people all the time, spend 80 to 90% of the time just asking questions.
yeah.
It sounds simple, but so many people can't do it. They just rush like I got to have the solution, all right? I need to know. I'm the manager, or I'm in charge, and I'm like, no, throw all that out. If you really want to get a great solution, do that. And so by taking 80% of the time to ask questions, we had identified that we could actually solve this problem in the fastest time possible, given that it was like a computer algorithm. And of course, he wrote it down. And as I was leaving, that's how I think I knew I got the interview. I ended up getting hired by Microsoft. So that planning phase, I think, is so important for people. How do you get people to slow down, right? They're so used to going fast. I don't know if you have any other exercises or something else to help people slow down.
Before I answer that question, I want to mention something in line with what you were just talking about, because the thing about management, so I work just with managers. I sometimes train teams, but I mainly work with managers, and especially new managers. And the thing that new managers forget, or they're not really aware of, is that being a manager is nothing more than solving problems. That's your entire job. So once you've got the solution for how to solve a problem, once you know that every question that you're looking at is a possible problem or opportunity to be taken advantage of, then you're on your way. So I just wanted to mention that. So how do you get people to slow down?
Yeah.
One of the ways is to, and I do this as part of the planning phase as well, is make sure that people know what your company mission is or your organization mission is and what your vision is. And do regular check-ins, as you're going through the planning process. How does this relate to our mission? How does this relate to our vision? And also the goal, if you have a goal for what you want this exploratory conversation to achieve at the end of the day, the problem that or the solution that you eventually come up with. Is this getting us on the way to achieving our goal? So always bringing people back, kind of like to the heart almost of, this is what we're about. Does it feel authentic to us as individuals and to us as an organization? That's how I get people to slow down.
So reviewing, yeah, big things like goals, vision, all right. Quite often too, people are doing things that don't match. You don't even like. I end up asking the question, going, "Why?" I'm not sure why you're doing this.
Yeah.
So like, I'll slow down, and I like you got to explain it to me. Like I'm from the outside because again, like if it's an event or something like that, it has to match these people who may know nothing about your vision, your goals, your culture, right?
That's true. And so another way to get people to slow down is by asking questions.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, asking those questions. What is your goal? What is your vision? What is your mission? I do have what strategy in the choosing, and I'd be curious to hear what you think about it. So, while after a brainstorm session, quite often I tell people usually to look for one or both of these qualities. One is, of course, the one that's most likely to work,
Uh-huh.
but I also add the other one, the one that's most likely to be accepted by all of your teammates. So I use this in team building or in teamwork. And sometimes, even if you make the wrong decision, if you made it together as a team, you can
Hmm.
at least know that you didn't try to push a solution that nobody was bought into. Because that's certain, that to me, that's certain for failure, even if it's better. So, anyways,
Well, I'm going to challenge you on that
sure.
because there, I think, is another choice. Yes, could it work? Will it be accepted? Yeah, they're important questions. One of the interesting things about ideating that I've found, and you've probably come across this as well, is how silly the ideas are sometimes. And that's where the magic is, to be honest. The sillier the idea, the better, because the beauty of coming up with a unique idea comes from having to merge the stimulus with the problem in a way that's different. And so if you've got a solution, everybody's laughing and saying, "Oh my God, that will never work. How could we possibly make that happen?" That's the one you push at. That's the one that got people engaged and energized. So
Mm.
that's the one that's worth exploring.
Hmm. Yeah, sometimes I'll be curious if you have any silliest ideas that did work. Here's two examples that I had. This one was I work with a company in Saudi Arabia that turned out to be like one of the largest poultry companies, and they had a chicken farm where like 80% of the chickens were not making it. They were passing away before they would they could become product, and they tried all sorts of stuff and none of it worked, right? I think they tried antibiotics, they tried something else, a new feed. So they tried all these other things. And finally, this guy had to brainstorm some other stuff. And it really got to the part. This is what I do love about creative thinking is that when you finally identify the core of the problem, not the symptom,
Yeah.
the core of the problem, then you can really fix something. And so he discovered that a virus was getting in and it was coming from other farms and was coming on the truck wheels that were delivering the feed,
Ah.
right? Because what happens is the trucks go to all these different farms and deliver stuff. And the problem was is that it was taking a virus from one farm, bringing it to his farm and killing all his chickens. And
Mm.
so what they invented was a bath, which was a bath that was big enough that the trucks had to drive and roll their wheels through before they could come in and deliver. And he actually turned, a completely broken chicken farm into a working chicken farm. And so I think that I think they started where the idea was kind of ludicrous, but in the end, it turned out that this bath thing was really the top idea. I don't know if you have any other examples in your work with other people of silly ideas that really actually turned out to be the right one.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And World Economic Forum used to bring up some examples of things like that. People working in developing companies to come up with solutions like that. And necessity is the mother of invention. There is an example that I wanted to share with you. It's not one from my experience, but it's one that's always stuck with me.
Yeah.
There was a city in the Netherlands that had a littering problem. And they started, putting fines up, if they caught people littering, they were fined and all the rest of it. And they wanted a different way of resolving this issue. Fines, people aren't going to pay them, and it sends a bad message anyway if you want people to make use of the green space. So they got a bunch of people together, and I don't know the process that they went through, but the solution was fantastic. So basically, they had these trash cans altered so that there was a sensor that was fitted just below where you put the trash in.
Okay.
And anytime anything hit that sensor, it told a joke. And so, so what happened was, as more and more people realized this, they started picking up litter and putting it in the trash can so that they would get the reward of having been told a joke.
Oh, that's too funny. There I heard the similar version of it for Texas, right? Texas had people throwing trash out of their car windows,
Yeah.
right? And they tried all these things like anti-litter campaigns, bigger fines. None of them really worked, but they came up. The marketing agency that was who was speaking around this said that it was the key part. Don't mess with Texas.
No.
Was the key phrase that got people to stop littering. Was don't mess with Texas, right? And
Perfect.
it's so, again, solutions have to fit a culture,
Yeah.
right? And I do love though that these small things, unexpected things too. I have a good friend, Monica Cornetti, who does gamification, and her favorite game mechanic is surprise and delight.
Ah,
Surprise and delight. So I'd love to hear
good.
a little more too, Elia, about what surprised and delighted you over the last 3 years. So I'm sure you did a lot of work on virtual. And I'm just curious of like, what are some of the things that surprised and delighted you?
That's a great question because not many people ask that question. It's very positive, and that's what I like about it.
Aha.
Um, what I was surprised and delighted by was the the result of having to be virtual was that we craved community. We
Mm.
craved connection. And so we learned how to connect virtually. We learned how to develop virtual communities. And I think it just reinforced the humanness within us that, yeah, we've become such a technical world, and advances still are, moving forward at a horrific pace. But at the very base of it, we are human beings, and the very primitive parts of our brain need to have that connection with other people, to feel as if we're making a difference, to feel as if we matter. So, it was a horrible situation, the pandemic, but that was the silver lining to it.
It's a great silver lining. One of the things that came out of it for me was this ability to connect with people all around the world. And I host a karaoke group every Saturday at 7 to 10 p.m. So it's like-minded people who want to sing. And it's interesting now though, Ellie. I just realized I have met about 60% of them in person.
Oh, great.
So even one he lives in Puerto Rico, but he came to do sign language interpretation at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. So we drove down and we met him there. Right, another one came and stayed with me during a production of a conference, and so a number of these people I've gotten a chance to meet in person, and I've told people that I think through the pandemic, we're humans, right? We're designed to connect
Yes.
so that we can connect and we can network over virtual. It's just slightly different, and that's the hard part for people to learn. I'm curious, you have a great connection to share that you made virtually over the last 3 years.
I think the one that comes to mind is actually one that I made very recently.
Yeah.
I attended the Green Biz conference virtually,
Okay.
and somebody else who also attended virtually reached out to me. He works in a completely different space, and he just said, it was good to see you at Green Biz, and maybe we can connect here on LinkedIn. So we did. And one of us, and I can't even remember who, said, well, let's have a conversation. Let's meet on Zoom. Let's get together. Well, the result of that is that we're actually working on a project together. He's in the DEI space, which is completely different from creativity and innovation. And yet, the basis of successful creativity and innovation is diverse groups of people. So we're building a presentation on that theme, and so that's an example of something positive that came out for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, I have cited research too that says the companies that are more diverse are more productive, right? They have higher results, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 30%. And so that diversity is really key. I think it's also like here, like if you're talking about problem solving, is that when you have a diverse group, that's often where everyone is looking at the problem from a different viewpoint, and
Yeah,
that's how new solutions really come out
yeah.
and everyone thinking about it the same. Oh, well, that's a great connection that you made again over virtual. What are some of your best practices then in presenting or in facilitating on virtual? What are some of the things that you personally do to really make your programs engaging?
Yeah. Well, having this background in training helps, because that's given me a lot of a good foundation on how to make a successful training to start with.
Mm,
So part of that, translates over very nicely into a virtual environment. So some of the things that I do are I make sure that I build in two-way engagement after certain periods of time. So like roughly every 10 minutes. I heard somebody say you should do this every 5 minutes, and I'm not sure that contributes to learning, if you're trying to lead a course or something, but certainly having engagement where people get to discuss. And this is what I look for as well when I attend a virtual meeting is, is it going to be juicy, meaty conversation where I get to learn from other people or at least compare experiences? Or is it just going to be, oh, this is me, this is what I do, this is what I'm looking for. I've had enough of that. So, having providing an opportunity for actual discussion, because we learn by doing. And so if we have the opportunity to apply what we just heard in the course of, here's this person sharing their skills, the fastest way of doing that is by getting together with a group of people in a breakout room and saying, here's how I did it, or here's how I think it could be applied. So that's a big part of it. And the other part too is, as with any presentation, leave as many words off the slide as possible. If you are using slides, I try and use pictures as much as possible,
yeah.
because I think that that stimulates the imagination as well.
Yeah, I just recently had another conference that had a slide that I believe had 200 or more words on it.
Oh no.
And there's a few kinds of that might have a reason for that, but that would most likely what my good friends in the presentation world said. That's called a handout. Well, if you're going to give that many
Yeah.
words, like don't put it on the slide, right? Put it in a handout, and if then let somebody read it later. I really love this idea of meaty conversations. I'll cite John Medina, who wrote the book Brain Rules. Who Here from our good friends at UW said every 10 minutes, right? I do like to design programs now that roughly every 10 minutes I'll shift gears somehow or another, whether it's rather presenting or look for a point of interaction. But maybe you'll enjoy this latest tip I've been giving, Elia. And this tip is I allocate up to half of the time of my presentation for the audience to talk.
Yeah, good rule.
And so that one number one makes the class, engaging because it's almost. I tell people it's almost impossible for people to multitask when they're talking to you or somebody else directly.
Yeah.
Because we're humans too. We're like we don't really want to be that rude, and if you are that rude, it says a lot about you.
Yes.
And then the second one is that is is I think then every class is different. So even though you're teaching the same principles, you could even teach the same framework, right? I think it comes out differently because, again, these different stories and different examples come up, and they're way more important and relevant than whatever stories that we have. Okay, I'm going to ask a very unusual question. Is that okay?
I'm ready.
Okay, you have this. You have a person or a representation of somebody in your plant. Can I ask who that is?
That is Sexy Sadie. My mother was a pro at buying unusual things at thrift shops, and this was one of them. And so she sits very proudly in the background, kind of peering over my shoulder.
So it's kind of like overseeing and also a nod to your family or your heritage. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, does that make you a thrift shopper or not? Or did that
Oh,
not?
yeah, I'm a big thrift shopper, because I believe in recycling as much as possible. I'm an aspiring minimalist. Let's put it aspiring because I still have more things than I need. But so I also feed thrift shops.
What did we recently? Somebody gifted us. It was a globe. That's a bar. That's open the globe and it can hold bottles and glasses.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Because we were actually been learning over the pandemic. We learned how to make a really really good Manhattan.
Oh, cool.
I'm curious. Do you have any? What's a top item that you may have acquired through through a thrift shop?
I think the top item still is oh, what's the name for it? It's a big, heavy pot Dutch oven that
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, and, I got it, online from Goodwill, and I was stoked. It was like I still use it, it's one of my favorite cooking utensils.
It's so funny. I have one of them too. It's a cast iron pan that's like really extra big. Like it
Yeah.
almost takes me two burners for it. And it came from Walmart and it was $17. New, new. And it's like I'm not a big fan of shopping at Walmart per se, but this pan, one of the things that we do after Thanksgiving is we make turkey pot pie, and so you make all the filling inside of the turkey pot pie, and then just stick the crust on the top of this cast iron pan, shove it in the oven, and so.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, that's impressive. Okay, so thanks for that. Going back to not the past or thrift shop, but going to the future,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you think will happen or that you wish for in either virtual or hybrid going forward?
I think, and I've had this thought for the last few years actually, that virtual reality is going to be big
Yes.
in the future
Yeah.
because it's another way of bringing people together. Um, Digital whiteboards are fine, but they're very flat, they're very 2D. You know, everybody knows what a whiteboard is. It doesn't change in its function, whether it's digital or in a room. But one of the things that we can't do yet virtually is stand side by side with other people. And this is where the magic happens sometimes. If you are just playing like kids with a concept or, playing with, how do you create a tower out of spaghetti sticks and a marshmallow? Do you talk through it endlessly or do you just stand side by side and see what you come up with?
Interesting. Okay, so then let me check. Do you own a headset yet or not?
No, and if somebody would wants to donate one, I will happily accept it. I'd love to try this out, but no, I haven't got there yet.
It's amazing the Quest 2. I know there's new ones out, but the Quest 2 was really popular about a year ago, and that there were some refurbished models that came out, and they were as low as two
Ah,
or $300. I found myself, Elliot, you probably know, right? I'm like the biggest tech head you've ever met. I've
yes.
got so much technology running here. I did buy a headset, and I was surprised. I really made a goal to try and just use it like an hour a day. I
Yeah.
also tried to use it for my workout, right? Like there are a number of workout programs that are really interesting that are on there, and I found myself not using it over the last year. Now I still have the headset. I still have everything around it.
Yeah.
I did try a few things. It's really funny. There were some there were some spectacular failures. Right. One of them was that after the Super Bowl, there was supposed to be this great Foo Fighters concert that was only available on VR. And I tried to get in. I waited. I actually navigated myself to the door. I waited at the door, and then the concert started, and nobody got admitted. And we're all talking around each other. It's really funny, though, because I met a bunch of other people who were VR advocates, but all of us were being left out.
Oh,
And it turned out that I ended up having to watch it on 2D, that it was running on Facebook Live, but it wasn't running correctly on the VR headset. Like we broke it, right? It is
yeah.
so
So I'm curious
yeah.
because I understand, why that would leave a bad taste in your mouth, but do you have any sense for why you stopped using the headset?
Yeah, I know. I'm not exactly sure. Well, the funny part around it is too. This is I think it's chicken and egg, and the chicken and egg part is that there's probably not that many of my friends who are on yet.
Yeah.
By the way, so those who are listening, like if you are a VR fan, you're on a Quest 2, right? Chat me your link, and I will connect with you. Because I do think that that's trying to figure out like where is one of those places where we could experiment. And I know a couple of groups. Like I joined a couple of groups where they do co-working, where there's like 3 or 4 of them get into a virtual office and co-work with each other, so you can meet other people. But I don't know. I just haven't found the right mix, and I thought the pandemic would do it. Right. If
Yeah.
there's anything to push over, virtual, I thought it would be that. But VR still hasn't yet eclipsed the numbers that it needs. Like there's only about 1 or 2% of the population using VR, and
Mhm.
so it needs an event. Like again, virtual and Zoom had the coronavirus, and that pushed it over the edge. I don't know what event is going to be for VR, but I do believe it's going to happen sometime in the future. So,
Yeah, my feeling is it's gonna be education. It
mm. Say more.
uh, yeah, I think it's gonna be and especially if they can get the headsets smaller so that,
Yeah.
they're not as clunky and heavy. But, and this would have been perfect during the pandemic, and I'm really surprised that nobody came up with it and, pushed that envelope further. But, just imagine how you could bring certain lessons to life, especially history, or even math, well, here's an example. So, talk about creative thinking.
Yeah.
Einstein came up with a theory of relativity as a result of daydreaming what it would be like to ride on the end of a light beam in space. So, what if you can apply those principles to math or physics
Yeah.
classes? How involving would that be for students?
Yeah, I think that we'll see things like that. And I think one of the cool parts about VR is like you again probably have seen too, like I have this ridiculous setup.
Yeah.
In VR, it doesn't cost any more than the headset, right? So because what happens is you can put virtual screens in all these different places. And so I do think we're gonna see a generation that will grow up, right? If there's a generation that does grow up with VR, that you'll see that their ability to handle and manage things in that space, will increase, and we'll see what happens as an artifact of that. So
Yeah. I think Google almost got there with Google Glass a number of years ago. That was small and, obviously there were some problems with it because I don't think it exists anymore.
yeah, it had, it's funny too. It wasn't the hardware; it was the software. Like I like to say,
Ah,
the hard stuff is easy and the soft stuff is hard. And it actually had a lot of blowback in the social aspect, right? Because people didn't want glass there, even though their phones are doing the exact same thing every single day. But politically or social society, people didn't want the glass part was just too not human, right? And
mm,
so it got crushed, I think, not by its technical abilities, but it got crushed by its how it got positioned in society. And so
got
that's
it.
the other thing that you'll see too. There will be some version of VR that will be much more friendly, right? Like your pair of glasses, something that's much more natural to us as humans. And
Yeah.
so yeah. All right. Well, cool. Well, Elliot, thank you so much for joining us. If you had the ability for people who are listening, it's like our good friend Philip here, to remember just one thing from this interview, what do you want that one thing to be?
That Facilitating creative problem solving in a team can help solve challenges faster, make your organization more successful, and keep your team happier, which means lower attrition.
And that's going to be really important now. I know a lot of people are laying off. One of the things you got to do right after a layoff is make sure the people you have here with you are happy because they are wondering. And at least in team building, one of the things that I found out over my years of team building, Elia, is that we're a leading indicator for the economy recovery, right? When people start calling team builders is when they think they're done laying off because nobody calls a team builder while they're doing layoffs. They only call them after it's done.
That's very true. Yeah.
So invest in your teams. Elliot, thank you so much for your time today. It was great talking with you today.
Thank you, John. This was wonderful.
Outstanding. This is John Chen, and we've been chatting with Ellia Harris, a coach, trainer, speaker with her Lightbulb thinking framework. And we hope that you enjoyed this conversation, that you really took these parts around here. Take care of your team and see how you can unlock the creativity from that team. One of the ways you can unlock that creativity is subscribe. Get more videos like this and get notified when they show up. So hit the subscribe and the bell. You can share this. You can like and comment on side of here. Again, if you want this podcast, you can go to engagingvirtualmeetings.online and you can subscribe to this podcast in any one of the 13 amazing locations where Apple Podcast is currently our number one and Spotify is number two. Again, one more time, you can register for the Engaging Conference October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd with a live component right here in Seattle, Washington, as well as a virtual. So we're going to go hybrid this year. You can register at engagingvirtualmeetings.com/CON. And if you want to be like Ellia and want to be the next person here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast, just go to engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet, select interview, select the best hour of your day, and you too could be the next guest here on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. Happy holidays, everyone, and we will see you next time. This is John Chen, the author of the Amazon #1 hot new release, Engaging Virtual Meetings. I personally want to say thank you for listening to the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast. It is my passion to help you eliminate bad virtual meetings. Make sure that you click subscribe so that you can get the latest episode of the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast with all of the latest ideas. Hey, I want to meet you. If you want to talk about a virtual meeting challenge, or if you want to be the next guest on the Engaging Virtual Meetings podcast, just go to engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet. That's engagingvirtualmeetings.com/meet, MEET, and find your best time to meet up. Thank you, and I look forward to engaging with you online.